good to see everyone here this morning. Let's turn in our Bibles to the book of Daniel as we continue on in our journey through Daniel. Remember, as we get to Daniel chapter 7, that from 7 to 12 happened during chapters 1 through 6. And so first Daniel was interpreting dreams of others, and now he's interpreting his dreams and having them interpreted as we get in Daniel chapter 7. And Daniel's going to take us all the way from Nebuchadnezzar all the way to the Lord's coming back and setting up his millennial kingdom. And so he's going to take us through those stages. And folks have tried to say that it must have been written after the fact because of how true the fact it is. But we see that that is prophecy and God is in control of that. One of the problems with evil, we're going to look at the Antichrist. The Antichrist is a topic amongst a lot of preachers and things today. And one of the problems with evil is its ability to deceive. Now remember, Satan is the master of deception. I told you, it started in the garden, and it continues on to this day. And it's easy to be fooled by evil. And because he mixes a little truth sometimes with untruth, and folks get caught up in it. And sometimes they get caught up in it till it's too late to reverse their things, their decisions in their life. The Antichrist, though, will not appear evil. That's why I want to let you know. It's just like Satan's not dressed in a red suit with the pitchfork and horns on his head. Matter of fact, when you look at the descriptions of Satan before he fell, he was a very beautiful and immaculate person. And so, but the Antichrist, he is shrouded in charisma. People are going to be attracted to him. And he is a smooth talker. He's kind of like a good used car salesman. Convincing you that car he has is top notch. And it depends on whose scale you're on, whether it is or not. Until he's revealed by Christ and destroyed by Christ, as we'll see in these texts. One of the most popular indoor sports of theologians, though, has tried to identify the Antichrist. Spoken of by Daniel and the prophet John in 1 John. Everyone and everything from individual Roman rulers to the whole Catholic system, from the Pope to Oliver Cromwell, from Hitler to John F. Kennedy, from Henry Kissinger to Judas Iscariot, have been made candidates for the Antichrist. In Revelation 13:18, we're told his number is, what? 666. I told you one of my first experiences with that thought is that before I was a Christian, I was living in Kentucky, and we got an address that was 666. And my wife says, no, that's not good. I didn't know back then, but people have tried to figure out who the Antichrist is by playing number games. The fun thing is that anyone can be the Antichrist if you do it just right. You got 3 simple rules here. 1, if the proper name doesn't work, add a title. Number 2, if it doesn't work in English, try Hebrew, Greek, or Latin. And if none of those things work, cheat on the spelling. But anyhow, nobody knows what exactly the number means until God wants us to know, right? And the Bible says he is more than just an insignificant person who will appear sometime in the future. There's lots of information about the Antichrist. Now, I personally believe that we don't know who he is, but we can know what kind of person he is from what it tells us in the Scripture. And then the 7th Daniel chapter sets the stage for understanding this a whole lot. He shares a lot of good stuff here in Daniel chapter 7. But also Daniel 7 reminds us, Dean, God is in control, right? He is sovereign. And we want to remember that God is in control. And he takes us through the human steps of government, from that statue, then to the beast that he describes, as we looked at the lion, the bear, and the leopard, and then the iron-toothed beast that we'll look at more in just a moment. All the way to Christ's kingdom that smashes that. If you remember back when we looked at the statue, you saw a rock coming out from heaven down the mountainside, and it destroys the statue, and it's nothing but dust. And that's what God's going to do to all human government. One day, Jesus Christ will be in charge, and we have none of this mess, as Dr. Jeremiah shared this morning with. We won't have none of this mess we're putting up with today. And he'll be on the throne forever and ever and ever. Daniel introduces things, there's different epics through these words. And in Daniel chapter 7, verse 2, it says, Daniel spoke, saying, I saw in my night vision, or vision by night. Down in verse 7, he says again, after this I saw in the night vision. And then in verse 20, he says the same thing. Excuse me here, if I get my pages are stuck together. In verse 20, I got the wrong verse. Verse 13, I got you the wrong spot. I was watching in the night visions. And so Daniel's going to have some visions, some dreams that happen that really upset him. And he's trying to figure out what they mean. And God's showing him what's going to take place, in the future. And it's great stuff. And he's going to tell him about the Antichrist. Now, we looked at him in the message before as the little horn that came up. Because one day, Babylon's gone, Medo-Persia's gone, Greece is gone, and Rome's gone, kinda. But one day there's going to be a resurgence there, and we're going to have a 10-king federation. And out of these 10 kings is going to come a little horn, we saw there, down in verse 8, the little horn. And that little horn, as said in Thessalonians, is the man of sin, the man of perdition. And he's the first beast in Revelation, and it's the Antichrist. It's the Antichrist. And he's going to tell us some things about the Antichrist in these verses. Number one, I have on your list that he is a charismatic leader. The world is ripe for a leader who will come upon the stage of our world scene and command the respect and following of the world. Because nobody seems to have the answer to our international problems, but the Antichrist will. All the world is looking for someone to solve them. When he comes, he'll have a supernatural ability, supernatural revelation. He is energized by Satan, and he can demonstrate his ability to solve problems. And we'll see that in the vacuum that has been created. And that's what I'm going to tell you about in a minute. But the Antichrist is that type of person. He's a charismatic leader, and I don't mean he's Pentecostal. That's not what we're talking about. He has great charisma. Number one, in verse 8, he is a great speaker. He's a great orator. Verse 8, I considered the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up from among them, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots. And there in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words. In the NIV it says he's speaking boastful words. Otherwise he is a great orator. He's going to captivate people by his speech. Like I told you, he just has the ability to talk and people listen. And he also, it says that again in verse 20. But in 25 it says this, verse 25, and we hopefully will get there today. He shall speak pompous words against the Most High. And so he's going to do everything he can to convince people that he's God. He's going to have the ability to do signs and miracles and things like that, as we'll look at in just a moment. But he establishes himself as God. And he wants to be ruler of all things. And one day, even it tells us in the Bible that he's going to set up a statue. Kind of like the same thing we saw that Nebuchadnezzar did. But this statue will also be able to speak. Folks still haven't understood exactly how he's going to do that. But he is going to be a great orator, and everyone who doesn't worship this statue will be beheaded or meet some other kind of demise. He has a wonderful eloquence, and he's able to capture the attention and admiration of the world. And we've seen that happen with people, with Hitler. He mesmerized bunches of people, and they just were captivated. Everyone who hears him speak will be caught up in that. Also, it tells you something else there in verse 20 about him. It tells us that he had eyes, which had eyes and a mouth which spoke pompous words. And also it says there, as you go on, that he had, whose appearance was greater than his fellows. That word appearance there means abundant in size or in rank. But he's going to have some kind of ability when he walks into the room that people like the way he looks and they just are drawn to him. And, you know, we see that in our starstruck world, right? Certain movie stars on either side of the gender thing there, male or female, when they walk in, people go, oh, man. And you know, and people listen to them. We had so many folks in the realm there getting involved in politics, and people listen to them, so they vote for who this guy's going to walk in, and people are going to go, man, he's the man. He's got it. He's smart. He's good looking. He could be like Saul, maybe even Saul. Remember him? He was a head above everybody that was there at that time. And so whatever it means there, he's going to immediately capture attention. And I believe, again, the magnetism of Satan working through him is going to draw people to him like he did so many, even in the cults that we've faced and seen in our lifetime. The Antichrist is a charismatic leader. He's a clever leader. And I use that phrase there that he says he has eyes. Well, that doesn't mean a whole lot. But in the Bible, that means that he has a great mental ability. He has great intellect. And he's able to say, this is how we'll solve this issue. And he'll have a plan. He's smart. And folks are going to say, man, we've been waiting for that. During this 10 king things, up pops this horn, and he gets rid of 3 kings. And it says there in verse 8 that he uprooted them. He's clever. That word means to squeeze out, to push out by subterfuge, to come in and cleverly replace. So somehow he's going to come in and he's going to get rid of 3 kings, and he's going to take their place. He's very intelligent. He's able to talk people into anything. He's a clever leader. And then we go on, as I can move on for you here, he's a cultic leader. In verse 25, it says this. Verse 25 of chapter 7. He shall speak pompous words against the Most High, shall persecute the saints of the Most High, and shall intend to change times and law. Then the saints shall be given into his hands for a time and times and half a times. It says that he's going to try to change the laws and the times. He won't just be in the political realm, but he's going to be in the religious realm. Remember, the Antichrist wants all worship to come to him, just as Satan would love for you to worship him. He's a cultic leader. He stands up and he puts himself in God's place. And you can read about that in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4. And he stands up and he tells everybody that he's God at the middle of the tribulation period. He'll ask people to fall down and worship him. One of the people later in the book of Daniel we'll look at, a historical type of the Antichrist, and I shared his name with you before, Antiochus Epiphanes IV. Real person that walked upon this earth. He illustrates this concept of the Antichrist of self-worship. Remember when Satan tempted Jesus, what did he try to get him to do? To worship him. And he says, you shall only what? Worship the Lord your God. Deuteronomy there in Matthew. And it tells us that. Satan wants us to fall down and worship him, and the Antichrist is the same way. From that day and time when Antiochus Epiphanes IV existed, and he was the first one that we see persecuting a group of people because of their religious affiliation. There were coins from that time that we have to this day, and on this coin is seen a figure of Zeus. And you remember who Zeus is? Zeus is one of the king gods of the Grecian Empire, Zeus was, and whose features closely resemble those of Antiochus Epiphanes. Get that, right? He made sure his picture's on this coin, and here's what it says. King Antiochus, we can understand that, God manifest. Otherwise what? God in the flesh. When you look at him, he's saying, I'm God. Victory bearer. So we see that he's going to demand people worship him, and he's going to change the laws. He'll get rid of religious feast days. No more Easter. No more Good Friday, because that worships for somebody else, right? He's going to get rid of all that stuff. He's going to try to change the calendar. Some folks even think that he'll kind of change the workday week. And this was new to me, that someone else tried to do that. Napoleon tried to change the 7-day week to a 10-day week. I don't know how many of those days was weekends. But anyhow, he's going to try to do everything different than what God does it. And he's going to change the laws of morality. And we see that happening, folks. We see it happening. What is right is considered wrong. And he just tries to obliterate God from the picture. And he'll say, you don't have to follow God's morality. Here's a new set of laws. And that's kind of what's happened in our system, in our world today, right? We have a new set of laws, supposedly. We were used to things in younger generations doing things God's way, even though not everyone did things God's way. And the evil's been around ever since the beginning, don't get me wrong. But we see things changing when someone can't be identified as a man and a woman. And someone can't be identified as a married couple, as a man and a woman. I'm sorry. That's the way God designed it, right? One man, one woman for life. And I know we messed that up too. But the difference between two men and two women together, and I live beside that situation every day. I have a couple, gals next door, and I call them the happy girls. And they're nice. I'm friends with them, and I would not be unloving and caring to them, but I wouldn't be afraid to tell them what their lifestyle is not how God designed it, right? God did not create it that way. And they have a daughter. Now, they don't have a daughter. The woman used to be married to a male. One of them did, and they have a daughter, and they're raising this girl. But now her mind, she's going to know she has two moms instead of a mom and a dad. And our system does that. You can't watch too many TV shows, folks, when you don't see that reality lived out. And after a while, you get beat over and beat with it and beat with it. And then you start, oh, okay, it's not really that bad. Yes, it is. It's sin. It's what caused Jesus' death on the cross. And we know that that's there, and it needs to be dealt with. But he'll say that's all right. I believe, and we'll get there sooner or later, I believe the Antichrist is part of the LGBTQ community. And I'll prove that when I get there to it. And so he will try to change, and he will do great things. And I'm not going to turn there, because of our time, and we're going to finish right after this thought so that we can, because he is a charismatic leader. And I shared with you in 2 Thessalonians 2:9, it says this man will come to do the work of Satan with counterfeit power and signs and miracles. And you might wonder, how is he going to get a whole world to follow him? Number one, he's good looking. He's a good talker. He's attractive for some reason. He has that ability. When I thought of that, I thought of Charles Manson. Now, when I looked at Charles Manson, I didn't say anything that was really charismatic to me. But I tell you what, that group of followers were pulled right in. They were, you know why? Because he was satanic. He was evil, and he had that ability to seduce people. This guy is going to be way beyond that, way beyond Hitler, way beyond. He's going to seduce all the unsaved of the world to follow him and take the mark of the beast. And again, Brother Jim and I have talked over there, how could this guy convince a third of the angels, Satan, to convince a third of the angels to leave heaven? Man, I don't know why anybody would do that, right? But that's how deceptive he is. That's how deceptive he is. And he's going to be able to do those great wonders and great lies and great signs. Some believe that he has the ability to bring people back from the grave. But you know what the Antichrist will do? He will be killed. And guess what he does? He gets resurrected. He's always an imitator. There's an unholy trinity and there's a holy trinity. And he's an imitator. He hasn't got anything new. But he does all these things to convince people that what? He's God. Because what is our basic foundation of the Christian faith? That Jesus died, he was buried, and what? Rose again. And he's now seated at the right hand of the Father, interceding for us. Isn't that great? But this man will be able to do those things. And that's why people are going to be drawn to him. And I want to say this to end and politely. Be careful with men or women saying that they have some of these powers that only God has. Right? You can't speak things into existence. Only God speaks things into existence. Only God raises people from the dead. Only God can make a person grow another arm or another leg. Just be careful with those things. And I'm not saying that God doesn't use people to do those things. He did the apostles, and he did that. But be careful, because it can be very seductive, very deceptive. And Satan uses those things to draw people in. And it's funny that almost most of those people are asking for one thing: money. If you give me money, God will bless you. If you give me money, God will give you this kind of money back. If you give me this, if you give me that. And then they're driving around in those big cars with the fancy watches and those things. And then Satan, who walks in? Satan walks right in, and he says, man, look at this good watch. Look at that car out there. Man, look at the clothes I'm wearing. And he's a good talker, and you say, yeah. And he says, I got answers for every one of your problems. Here's the list. And the world says, we'll take it. They fall right into that trap. We'll look at that next time, as he's also a cruel leader. He's a cruel leader, and we'll look at that next time.